Hi, beloved. You were not meant to live divided. You were made for wholeness. I'm Reverend Dr. Lisette Cross, aka Reverend Dr. L, author, ordained Baptist minister, lover of purple, and somebody who believes that your sexuality, your spirituality, and your leadership were not meant to be divided. This channel is for Black women, women of color, LGBTQ folks, spiritually grounded leaders, and yes, our clergy colleagues who are tired of pretending authenticity, who are tired of faking wholeness. That in fact, I'm here to remind you that you were not meant to live divided. And you can live undivided, love undivided, and lead undivided, whole and free. And that's what we're building here on this channel, living undivided. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share so that you can always be notified and keep the information, keep this connection going for the next time that I upload another video. But for now, let's get into it. I like to say I'm the Sex and Faith Reverend. It turns heads. And the truth of the matter is, I am the Sex and Faith Reverend because I fundamentally believe that we were not meant to live divided. Now, if there was a question that I get when I'm moving to and fro throughout the world is, how is it can you be an ordained Baptist minister and be a bisexual identified woman and be a former pastor of a church and be a theologian, an ethicist, a womanist, a nonprofit leader? Like, how can you live in these two separate worlds? And I have finally just come to accept that question. I come to accept people's like if you imagine the mind-blowing emoji, right? That people's minds are blown when they realize that yes, I am a reverend, like for real, like not a fake one, not like one from the internet. Like I went through seminary. I have a master's of divinity, a master's of theology, and a doctor of ministry. So all of my graduate education has been theologically trained, right? And my focus, of course, is in womanist theology and ethics with an emphasis on sexuality in the Black church. I decided to be licensed and ordained because I remember my professor, advisor, and so many of us called her mentor, but the Reverend Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon, God rest her memory, asked me, why do I need to be ordained, right? And why did I want to be ordained? Because if nobody's ever told you and you are not an ordained clergy listening to this, and for all my ordained colleagues, I think you would agree that to go through the hoops and the loops that you need to jump in order to become ordained, that is not a walk in the park, child. And dare I say that it's not something that I just recommend you do just because it feels like something nice to do. And really taken seriously, even being a licensed minister is for me and has been for me about a call. Because, child, if I could give this up, can I get another gift? Lord, thank you. And can I get another one? Right. And so when I accepted this call, when I fell in love with a woman at 30, when I engaged my real whole healing journey, like unabashedly, openly, I was also inviting God to like use me and to actually create in me a voice and a commitment to healing the disconnections between the church and sexuality, right? And you hear my language if you follow me on any of the social platforms. You really do hear me kind of flow between God, divine spirit, and ancestors, the universe, because what this journey has taught me in reconciling my faith and my sexuality is that when you become aware of that huge divide within yourself, you have to begin with the courage and the boldness to name God for yourself. And listen, beloved, sometimes that means that God that you were told to believe is actually not named the God that you do believe. What do I mean by that? Yes, I was taught, I grew up church adjacent, like many Black folks, right? You're either in the church or you church adjacent. And so, of course, I was taught God. My grandparents, on my mom's side and on my dad's side, were deeply committed to the church, deeply committed to serving the Lord, right? And as such, became examples for me. And then as I grew up and I started going to church, I actually was the youngest person in my church at the time, St. John's Missionary Baptist Church, Oceanside, California. And I wanted to teach Bible study, not just Bible study, Sunday school, right? I wanted to teach Sunday school. I was 14, y'all. 14. I wanted to teach Sunday school. And I had Sister Adams, I had an advocate that was on my behalf. She saw my potential. I'm so grateful for her. And she was like, okay, let's do it, And I will never forget what she opened up for me, right? And what that opportunity served, right, for my long term service in this way. So when people ask me, how can you be a reverend and talk about sex? I just say, I don't know. This is just kind of how I was called to like show up in the world, right? Now, don't let me paint this rosy picture. Getting to this place in my life was not, a simple, easy, oh, okay, God, you want me to talk about the two most opposing, like conflictual things in this world, right? We're all like taught when you're like entering, how to network and how to, go to dinner parties. Like there are things you don't talk about. The two top things typically are politics and religion. And then when you add in sex, child, I'm here for two out of the three of those. And on a good day, I'm here for all three of them. And so the reason that I am a reverend who boldly and openly talks about sex is because we need more witnesses. We need more seminary trained, yes, I said it. We need more seminary trained clergy who have done their work, who have sat with it themselves, and who have come to a place of understanding so that they can lead, teach, preach, and care for their congregations and their communities. Excuse me. And so that often means that when I am in, like I say that when I'm in sexual spaces, I'm a spiritual voice. And when I'm in spiritual spaces, I'm a sexual voice, right? And there are a couple of pillars that I just want to teach a little bit in this video today. So, one of those pillars is sex positivity, right? So, when you hear the term sex positive, it is not a green light on debauchery, right? It is not a green light on hedonism without responsibility, right? It is really to be sex positive is to affirm the value of our sexuality, to affirm the human like tendency to engage with one or more persons in sexual ways. Even people who are abstinent, who are celibate, who are um, asexual, and who also engage the act of sex and sexuality from a spectrum of ways that are not typical ways, are all sex positive. So sex positive is not about the labeling of behavior. It's actually the naming of a mindset. So ask yourself, am I blah blah blah? If I can talk today, right? Ask yourself, am I sex positive? Am I okay with the various expressions of sexuality, how people make decisions about who they're going to engage with sexually, how they're going to show up in the world, who they love and how they identify, as long as it is mutually affirming, consensual, as long as the power dynamics are healthy, can you say that, yeah, I'm good with it? I may not understand it, but I'm good with it. Only you, beloved, can determine where you are on the sex positive spectrum. The next thing that I want to share, just briefly teach on, are the terms sexuality and spirituality. Because one of the reasons that I am a reverend that talks about sex is because I was once a sexual health educator that was just a regular old church member and then became a minister. And one of the key things about my journey is being clear about the term sexuality. Sexuality, when I talk about it, is an all encompassing term. It does not just mean the sexual act, although oftentimes in common parlance, that's just a fancy word, child, of saying common dialogue and how we talk about sexuality, we're either talking about sex and sex activity or we're talking about being gay or straight, which really truly flattens and makes sexuality this like binary thing, and it ain't. It absolutely is not, right? Sexuality is expansive. And so, even in my operating definition, I tend to lean on three areas when I explain sexuality. Yes, sexuality is about our activity, the one or more persons that we're choosing to engage our bodies with for pleasure, for connection, for intimacy. It is about identity. Identity is about our sense of self, who we are on the inside, right? How we are attracted to other people, right? That sense of identity, nobody else has anything to say about. Is all about you, beloved, right? Only you can talk about your identity and name it for yourself and for others. And then the last prong is expression. The beautiful thing I love about sexuality is expression. Because, honey, as you see, I got my earrings on, got a little lip gloss, my nails are done, got a little low cut shirt on, dress on, whatever. Um, that's because that's how I choose to express my femininity. Well, for our, masculine folks, they show up and express in that way. For our non-binary folks, they're fluid in their expression, right? And so sexuality becomes these three components of activity, right? Our sexual behavior, the decisions we make about what we're doing with our body, our identity, our sense of self, who we are, how we see ourselves, how we are attracted to others, how we choose to be in relational connection with others. And then our expression, right? This is the outward way in which we show up in the world. We can't ever get away from sexuality. We enter this world as sexed bodies, right? The main way that we can determine between someone assigned female at birth or someone assigned male at birth is to look at the body. So that's what I mean by sexuality. And now the other side, right? I went to seminary. And I think when I went to seminary, well, number one, I didn't want to go to seminary, but you can fight. You can fight your creator for as long as you want, but you're going to end up doing what the creator has called you to do. That's just life, right? And you can choose to fight it all along, or you could just choose to go with the flow. Well, I'm a Taurus. Yep, I know. I'm stubborn. And so, of course, I tried to resist, but eventually I gave in and surrendered. I surrender all. Anyway, surrendered. And so when I went to seminary, of course, seminary is about theology, the study of God. It's about, understanding how the church works, understanding, systematic theology, church history, understanding like church administration, like what it means to do ministry, all of those wonderful things. Well, one of the interesting things about spirituality and the way that I choose to define spirituality is this really fundamental understanding that spirituality is about connecting to that which is greater than ourselves. Now, this really opens the field because To connect to that which is greater than ourselves doesn't exactly mean Christianity. I know. I'm gonna let that sit for a second. I'm gonna get some water. But what spirituality is this process of connection to that which is greater than yourself. And then we have the opportunity to choose the pathway to that connection. Now, this is where it can get really like crazy because you can be Christian. I believe you can be agnostic, you can be atheist. It doesn't make you any less spiritual or any more spiritual, right? Because if atheism or agnosticism is allowing you to connect to that which you define as greater than yourself, then hooray for you. For those of us who are Christian or who travel other faith paths, other religious paths, that simply means that if you're Buddhist or if you're Hindu or if you're Muslim, that you tend to follow the pathway that still leads to that which is greater than yourself. And that which is greater than yourself comes in a plethora. I love plethora. That's such a fun word to say, right? Plethora of things. What it means for y'all, some of y'all being like, I don't know what plethora is. Plethora means a whole lot. There's a whole lot, plethora. Like it's a lot. So you can say, like, oh yeah, there's a plethora of things happening in the world, because that means that there are a lot. It's a large selection. And so spirituality, when you begin to get into the like religion and faith component of it, you have to simply accept that your pathway to connecting to that which is greater than yourself is uniquely yours, right? I mean, the church is beautiful. Being Christian is amazing. It has its flaws, but there is not a religion on earth. There is not a belief system, in this world that doesn't have critiques, And so, one of my commitments in this work is that I love the Black church. And when I love something, I do reserve the right to critique it, not out of hate or animosity, but from a deep place of love. Because when you love something, you want it to be better, to do better. And so spirituality becomes this really beautiful, mysterious, flowy thing as you see me moving my hands. And it becomes hard to try to pin down. But even with the limited language we have, what I love to say about it is that you can be Christian. That is a type of spirituality. That's your chosen pathway to spirituality, right? And the beliefs that are within that. You could also be spiritual but not religion. You may be someone that can go to the forest and sit with trees and feel deeply spiritually moved. You can meditate. That might transcend you to another level and you are enlightened. You can practice other Buddhist practices or other chanting and mantras and manifesting and quantum leaping and all of these other ways in which we are connecting to this realm that is, greater than us. I, beloved, am not here to judge that. I am here to get you to think critically about it, to get clear about it. And so when people ask me, how is it that you are a reverend talking about sex? It is because I take seriously our spiritual journeys that I believe help us get clear about how we relate to one another, even as we deepen how we relate to ourselves. Now, for the Christians, that's when Jesus responds to the question, like, what's the greatest commandment, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So, this idea of loving God, self, and others is a practice of spirituality. Now, I've said a lot of words there because I want you to be clear that when I introduce myself as the Sex and Faith Reverend, or I'm very clear about this truth that we were not meant to live divided, it is because I've done my work, right? If you read my book Faithfully Free, you will get an understanding and a peek behind the curtain around how I landed here, right? What was my journey? Also, as you continue to stay connected to this channel and hopefully, get an opportunity to work with me, you will also learn that this work is an ongoing life work. It is actually why I created my four step process, right? RAP, WRAP. I created RAP because what I realized between seminary and life, excuse me, what I realized between seminary and life and pastoring for 7 years is that we're always discerning, we're always unfolding, we're always becoming and deepening our connection to ourselves, to God, creator, universe, light, spirit, ancestors, right? And to our bodies, to the way our bodies feel and how they support us and move us, how they send us messages. Like our bodies are absolutely amazing. And yet, everything around us, including the church as an institution, wants us to be divided, wants us to not embrace our body, to not question and really be clear about our spirituality. This world that's full of oppression, that's full of all of the things that are anti, just fill in the blanks, right? Um, Wants us to actually be distracted, because when we are distracted, we are not about our mission, our purpose, our call in the world. And it is in the words of Howard Thurman that I am reminded when he this is my summary of Howard Thurman, where he says, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and then go and do that. Because what the world needs is people who are alive. And so rap is what I created as I solidified from my own journey that I would absolutely become sex and faith reverend. Now, child, if you would have told me this while I was in seminary, I would have been like, no, that ain't for me. That can't be true. I'm just gonna like get my degree and keep it moving. But alas, right? As the text says, by text I just mean the Bible. As the text says, that man makes the plans and God laughs. Because the truth of the matter is that, and I don't want to get too woo woo, but that like we're all put here for a purpose, right? And that person purpose, that purpose is unique. And so I can't do your purpose and you can't do my purpose. We might have similar purpose, but it may not be the exact same. And child, with the number of humans in the world and the number of the amount of evil in the world and oppression and all of the things, if the system can just get a few of us distracted from doing what we were called to do, it will have won, right? And I'm not going to go too in depth in that because I don't want to go off on a whole nother tangent. But I'm saying that to say, beloved, that like when people ask me, oh, how is it that you are like a reverend who also talks about sex, right? It's not just because I'm a bisexual woman. It is because I do believe that we need clergy persons out here. We need ministers. We need pastors. We need ministry leaders who have confidence and who have compassion and who have skill to hold the complexity of our humanity, which can be encapsulated in our sexuality and our spirituality. And so, beloved, that is why I do this work, right? And what it means to be a reverend that talks about sex. Not just talking about it, right? Which I love to do. And we can sit and talk all as long as the day is long, or however that saying goes. And to also, my unique contribution is to give you a how, because we ask, what is wrong with the church? We ask, why does the church do what it does? We know that the church is obsessed with sexuality. The church is obsessed with silencing sexuality, right? It was Katie Cannon who said, sexuality sends more people to the grave than any other issue. And the church is one of the major culprits. And it breaks my heart that that is the case, because the church is also one of the most amazing, beautiful, connective experiences on how it can bring people together, on how it can help us through the deep emotional transitions of life, of what it means to show up for each other and for those who are the least, the lost, and the left out. But, beloved, when the church continues to tell you that you cannot live undivided, that your sexuality is wrong, and that you need to silence your body, that's when we get into territory that is not of God. And instead, it keeps so many of us in confusion and circling. And so I created RAP, this discernment process, this reflection tool, so that you can stop living divided, that you can be equipped with how do we live whole? How do we live in these bodies? And how do we live clearly in such a way that we are undivided, so that the way that we love is undivided? And, beloved, here is the key: the way that we lead is undivided, because our leadership in the world leaves an impact. And each of us was created to make positive impact in the world. But we can't do that when we're undivided. We can't do that when we have shame. We can't do that when we lack clarity around what we need, right? What you need for your own self around your sexuality and around your spirituality. Or you'll hear me say, beloved, around who you are, that's your sexuality, and what you believe, that's your spirituality, that then affects your impact, that's your leadership. Whew. Now, this is probably one of my longer videos because I really enjoy talking about this. And particularly, I love making the case that every reverend should be confident in talking about sex, even when it is not their primary focus, even when it is not their call. Because the reality is that all of us humans have sexuality and we have spirituality. And honey, that thing gets all messed up and all crazy. So if you are a clergy person, and you are looking for support, click the link in the description below. If you are a Black woman, a woman of color, a LGBTQ person that is wrestling with who you are and what you believe, click the link in the description. Because my purpose in the world, my mission, is to help you live whole, to help you live undivided, and to do that not just with rap, to also do that through gathering us in community, through teaching, through coaching, and through this continued way in which we're building community together. So, takeaway from today: yes, I am a reverend who talks about sex. And yes, beloved, I also believe that you can live undivided. If you're ready to go deeper, the link in the show description will take you to where you need to go. Be sure to stay connected. Be sure to drop something in the comments that hit you today. And if this video met a need, or you know somebody that could benefit from what was shared today, please share it. Be sure to like and subscribe. and support this ongoing dialogue and this work of what it means to live undivided. Because, beloved, you were not meant to live divided. You were made for wholeness. Later.